resurrecting one of their weapons.
You know what I love about the photography of Salt is there is no sense of crazy whip panning going on. There's it feels, I know it's not all tripoded and dollied. I presume there's a good amount, a healthy amount of handheld, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, the movie...
But it doesn't feel nuts. It feels like it's in control, and it's soothing to me, just as a watcher. I know it's action, but it's not. I know it's not going to ever make me angry at its skittishness.
No, but it starts out. The movie starts out with Evelyn Salt's world at rest in a way.
Right.
Everything seems normal,
right.
And so the camera's either on a tripod or on a Steadicam. It's very smooth. It doesn't have a tension. Once she's accused of being a Russian sleeper spy, we start to loosen the tripod. The camera goes onto the shoulder, but it's a steady shoulder. And then once she starts running, we loosen it again, and the camera goes into the hand, and it's all about the kinetics of the shot. So I've tried to and as I always do, to try and allow the mise-en-scene, the style of the camera, the use of the camera to mirror the mood of the scene and the point of the story that you're in. So as the story progresses, the cutting becomes more frenetic, and the camera becomes more Paul Greengrass-like, although it never reaches quite...
Not quite the level of... I thought the second Bourne film was bothersome. I didn't mind the third one, but
none of them bothered me because I was just caught up in the emotion of the camera movement.
Well, the pejorative term is shaky cam, and I don't feel your film becomes a shaky cam movie. That's what I.
No, it doesn't.
It feels locked in.
I must admit that I think that the handheld camera is closer to reality than the tripod. I think the tripod was a convention that, I don't know,
left over
from those great big studio cameras that had a huge baffle around them, because they made so much noise in the early sound era, and we just developed this convention of the camera needing to be still. I mean, look, we're sitting here now, but I'm not looking at you. As if you're grounded by an anchor. There's movement, and your camera there. And I think this is also a reason why it's changed. And that's the use of little handheld cameras. So we're starting to also see our everyday reality through those cameras, and so the static camera, I think, less and less is approximating how we see ourselves and present ourselves.
That's a fair point. That's an accurate point. But I know that people do respond to, independent of the reason for a style of the shooting of a film, I know that it's comforting when a film seems to be in good hands. There's a command, a feeling of assurance. And I just, I know that I'm not ignoring what you're saying about how it's appropriate to the content, to the story, and that's the correct way to go. I'm not disputing that, but I still enjoy a film that something tells me it's going to be a enjoyable visual ride just because of the sheer comfort of it, the command of it.
I've also learned...
the way people like key lighting in commercial films, with the light coming through people's hair, they just like that. It doesn't have anything to do with why or the aesthetic. It just.
But I've also learned to give up on a lot of control in making a movie. It was Chris Doyle that told me that. Doyle handholds the camera, and you'd never know.
But I feel it's funny.
He does spontaneous framing.
Does he?
Yeah, and
All
You
that
can
beautiful
go in,
stuff in the
it's
Quiet American was spontaneously framed?
spontaneous. It's spontaneous. That's just, he's got it on his shoulder, and he's watching the scene, and he'll just move the camera and find a new line, you know, he'll off frame to this way or that. And I learnt on Rabbit Proof Fence not to rein him in, not to question, not to keep saying, no, I want this. Because what I thought I wanted was not nearly as good as what he found spontaneously in the moment. On Catch a Fire, I had a wonderful Scottish camera operator called Alistair Ray, who extended this learning process for me. You know, he was also incredibly spontaneous, and I found frames that were much better than I myself could ever imagine. Now, sometimes you're whispering in his ear and saying, look for that, or line up on the door, or whatever. But, you know, with the right operator and the right osmosis between the actor, the director, the cinematographer, who can also be the operator, and is, say, in the case of Robert Elswit or Chris Doyle, magic happens. It's not that you're not directing it. It's not that there's no preparation and thought. It's just that all of your thinking about the scene and about the movie can spontaneously be captured, rather than by sitting there and looking and moving the camera and moving this. You know, I genuinely believe, and maybe it's because I'm getting older, because when you're getting older also you start to learn to give up, but you also start to learn to try and grasp whole of energy wherever it is, and the energy of uncertainty is one of the greatest energies. You learn to respect that as you get older, and maybe it's, you know, it's that.
You know, one of my first reactions to Salt, I told you, he's talking about getting older. I said it feels like it has the energy of a 38-year-old director. And you said, well, that's not entirely me, it is...
No, it isn't entirely me. I mean, Simon Crane choreographed the action sequences and shot some of them. Sometimes he shot independently of me, and sometimes with following my storyboards or my animatronics, you know, an animated storyboard, where he more or less, you know, gives me back exactly the images and the cutting and everything that I've asked for. But and then, you know, the editing by John Gilroy, you know, also makes the film energetic.
That's Tony Gilroy's brother.
Tony Gilroy's brother.
Who I happened to run into a party and said, yeah, I'm cutting Philip's film.
Yeah.
And has he cut for you previous to this?
No, this is the first time.
Huh. Has he only cut what does he cut besides his brother's films?
He's cut Gavin O'Connor's films.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Pride and Glory, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, and also for Joe Carnahan, he cut Narc and...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's...
18?
Huh?
The 18?
No, he didn't do 18, no.
Because I was going to say, I didn't like the cutting of that.
No, not 18.
Much. Yeah, okay.
So, you know, John Gilroy and Simon Crane, I would give a lot of the credit for the energy of some of the action sequences.
No, the surprise for me, this is my last question here, Mike. The surprise for me was I thought this being a Philip Noyce film that would be perhaps, and particularly because it's a complex story, and I was assuming it would come in around at least 110, 115. I forget what Clear and Present was. I forget what Patriot Games. Weren't they around that? 115?
Patriot Games was 110, and Clear and Present Danger was 123.
Okay. So I thought, you know, somewhere in that vicinity, give or take. Surprised to hear 95. That's really disciplined, lean, cut to the bone. Was that the game plan going in, or did it just seem...
Well, the screenplay was always around 100 minutes.
So it can become longer on its own, right?
It can, but not the way that I direct.
Okay.
You know, this is a complex story, so generally I directed with